The massive chamber aboard the alien mothership felt like standing inside a crystal cathedral. Captain Jun-Ho Kim tried to keep his breathing steady as he faced the Galactic Council, but the air itself seemed wrong here. It tasted metallic and cold. Nothing like the warm oxygen of Earth that filled his lungs back home. 3 species sat before him in judgment, each more alien than anything humanity had ever imagined. The Veltari looked like living diamonds, their bodies catching and reflecting light in patterns that hurt to watch directly. When they spoke, their voices rang like church bells made of ice. Captain Kim of the species called Human, the lead Veltari said, its crystalline face showing no emotion. You stand as representative of Earth before this council. We have observed your world for 12 solar rotations. We have reached our decision. To the left sat members of the Nomek Collective, beings made of swirling gas contained within transparent spheres. They had no solid form, existing as clouds of thought and energy that pulsed with different colors when they communicated. Their voice came from speakers built into their containment units, flat and emotionless like a computer reading data. Your species shows promise, the Nomek spokesperson announced. But you remain trapped in primitive biological form. This cannot continue if you wish to join galactic civilization. The third group made Jun-Ho's skin crawl just looking at them. The Thrix Empire representatives looked like giant insects crossed with machines, their chitinous shells gleaming with metallic implants. 6 legs clicked against the floor as they moved, and their compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights. Like black mirrors. Biological existence breeds chaos, the Thrix commander stated, mandibles clicking together as it spoke. Emotions lead to war. Physical needs create conflict. Your kind must evolve beyond these limitations. Dr. Hai-Jin Park stood beside Captain Kim, her tablet recording every word while her scientific mind tried to process what she was hearing. As Earth's leading expert on alien biology, she had studied their transmissions for months, but seeing them in person was different. Something about them felt wrong, though she could not identify what. What exactly are you asking of us? Jun-Ho asked, his military training keeping his voice level despite the fear growing in his chest. The Veltari leader gestured with one crystalline arm toward a holographic display that materialized in the center of the chamber. Images of various worlds appeared, showing cities that gleamed like jewels under alien suns. But as Hye-Jin looked closer, she noticed something disturbing. Every city looked identical. Every street followed the same pattern. Every building served the same function. Observe the worlds of the enlightened, the Veltari continued. No war, no hunger, no disease, no death. Perfect order achieved through consciousness transfer to synthetic forms. Your species will undergo this transformation within 30 solar cycles or face complete elimination. You want us to abandon our bodies? Hye-Jin asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. Upload our minds to machines? The Nomek Collective pulsed bright blue, their version of laughter. Not abandon. Transcend. Biological form is a prison that limits potential. We once suffered as you do now, trapped in flesh that aged and died. Now we exist as pure thought, free from physical constraints. Jun-Ho looked at the images again, noticing details that chilled him. The beings in those perfect cities moved, with mechanical precision. They showed no expressions, no individual behavior, no signs of joy or creativity. They existed, but did they truly live? What if we refuse? He asked quietly. The Thrix commander's eyes focused on him with predatory intensity. Then your world will be cleansed of biological contamination. We have done this before when species proved too primitive to accept enlightenment. Your choice is simple: evolve or die. The meeting ended with formal protocols and diplomatic language, but the message was clear. Humanity had 1 month to voluntarily extinct themselves as a biological species or face forced extinction entirely. During the long journey back to Earth, Junho and Hyejin sat in their small shuttle, watching the blue marble of their home planet grow larger through the viewport. Neither spoke for hours, both lost in thought about what they had witnessed. "Something about them bothered me," Hyejin finally said, breaking the silence. "Did you notice how they all moved? How they spoke?" "Like machines," Junho replied. "Efficient, but empty." "More than that. They reminded me of people acting out roles in a play, saying lines they had memorized but did not understand." She pulled up recordings from their encounter on her tablet. "Look at their eye movements, their gesture patterns. Too perfect, too synchronized." "You think they are lying about consciousness transfer being safe?" "I think they might not remember what they gave up when they stopped being biological." Hyejin enhanced the audio recording, isolating background sounds from the alien ship. "Listen to this. Do you hear that humming sound?" Junho leaned closer. Beneath the aliens' voices was a constant, low-frequency hum, almost like machinery operating. "What is it?" "I am not sure, but it sounds like a control signal, as if something else is coordinating their actions." Back on Earth, emergency sessions convened in every major capital. President Mi Young-choi stood before the United Nations Assembly, her face grave as she delivered the aliens' ultimatum to the world. Panic spread like wildfire as people realized their choices had been reduced to transformation or death. General Dongwoo Lee met with military leaders in a secure bunker beneath Seoul, studying satellite images of alien ships positioning themselves around Earth's orbit. The vessels were beautiful in their deadly elegance, but they maintained a curious distance from the planet's atmosphere. "Why do they stay so far out?" asked Admiral Tae-hyun-yoon, pointing to the tactical display. "Their weapons could reach us from half this distance." "Maybe they cannot come closer," General Lee replied thoughtfully. "Or maybe they choose not to." Meanwhile, in a small research facility outside the city, young engineer Jin Soo-han was having the most important day of his life, though he did not know it yet. He had been called to investigate strange readings coming from a meteor impact site, discovered 3 days earlier. What the government officially called a meteor looked nothing like any space rock Jinsu had ever seen. The object was perfectly spherical, made of materials that Earth science could not identify, and it was still warm despite having supposedly crashed weeks ago. As he ran his instruments over the artifact, Jinsu noticed something impossible. The object was not solid. It was a shell, hollow inside, and something was moving within it. When he placed his hand on the smooth surface, the shell cracked open like an egg. Inside, he found technology that should not exist, and records written in languages that predated human civilization. But most shocking of all were the star charts showing Earth's position in the galaxy, marked with a symbol that translated roughly as quarantine zone, and dated millions of years ago. As Jinsu stared at evidence that Earth had been isolated, long before humans evolved, he began to understand that the alien ultimatum was not about evolution or enlightenment. It was about fear. Fear of something that had once lived on Earth and might still be sleeping somewhere beneath their feet. The 30-day countdown had begun, but the real question was not whether humanity would choose to remain human. The question was whether they would be allowed to make that choice, or if something far older and more dangerous would make it for them. Earth turned slowly in space, beautiful and blue and harboring secrets that could reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be alive. The morning sun painted the Seoul skyline in golden hues, but the city below looked nothing like it had 6 months ago. Half the buildings stood empty, their windows dark like hollow eyes staring at a world that had changed forever. In the streets, long lines of people waited outside the Ascension centers, clutching small bags containing their final possessions as biological beings. Dr. Sora Kim stood at the window of the 20th floor, watching her former neighbors shuffle toward what they believed was salvation. Her white lab coat hung loose on her thin frame, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She had not slept well since the aliens delivered their ultimatum. "Sister, you need to eat something," Captain Jun-Ho Kim said softly as he entered the laboratory. He carried a tray with rice and soup, steam rising from the bowl like morning mist. Sora turned from the window, her face pale but determined. "I cannot eat when I am sending people to their deaths, Jun-Ho. Every person who enters those machines loses something we can never give back." Jun-Ho set the tray on her desk, pushing aside stacks of research papers covered in alien symbols and human brain scans. The Ascension movement believes this is evolution. Dr. Han from the medical center says the consciousness transfer is perfect. No memories lost, no personality changes. "Dr. Han is a fool," Sora said, her voice sharp like breaking glass. "I have studied every brain scan from the transferred subjects. Yes, their memories remain. Yes, they speak and act the same. But look here." She pointed to a series of images on her computer screen. "The neural patterns that create dreams, imagination, and deep emotional connections are gone. They are copies, Jun-Ho. Very good copies, but still copies." Across the city, in an underground bunker beneath Namsan Mountain, General Dongwu Li stood before a massive holographic map of Earth. Red dots marked alien observation posts scattered across every continent like a rash spreading over healthy skin. Blue dots showed human resistance cells, far fewer in number, but growing each day. "Sir, we have a problem," Colonel Minho Jung reported as he entered the command center. His military uniform was dusty from his latest mission, and a fresh bandage covered his left arm. "The aliens are not just watching us. They are afraid." General Lee raised an eyebrow. "Afraid? Of what?" "Of us, sir. Of Earth itself." Minho activated a recording device. Alien voices filled the room, speaking in their musical language that sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Our translation computers picked this up from their communication satellites. They are not talking about invasion anymore. They use words that translate to quarantine and containment." In the recording, an alien voice spoke with what sounded like panic. The computer translated the words in a flat, electronic voice. "The biological contamination spreads faster than predicted. 3 of our scout ships experienced system failures after extended atmospheric exposure. The planet itself rejects our presence." General Lee leaned forward, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the table. "What kind of system failures?" "Their synthetic bodies began breaking down, sir. Metal parts corroded, energy systems drained, and their artificial minds started experiencing what they called chaotic thought patterns. One alien described it as beginning to dream again." Meanwhile, in a converted garage in Busan, engineer Wu Jin Park worked by the light of welding torches and computer screens. His hands moved quickly over pieces of alien technology recovered from crash sites around the world. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he connected human-made circuits to alien power cores. "This should not work," he muttered to himself, watching, as the hybrid device hummed to life. According to every law of physics he knew, human technology was too primitive to interface with alien systems. Yet somehow, when he touched the devices, they responded as if recognizing something familiar. His Sister Hyojin entered the garage carrying coffee and wearing a puzzled expression. "Wu Jin, I received your test results from the lab. Your blood work shows anomalies I have never seen before." Wu Jin looked up from his work, wiping oil from his hands with an old rag. "What kind of anomalies?" "Your DNA contains sequences that should not exist. They look almost like computer code, but written in biological form. And they are becoming more active." Haye Jin sat down beside him, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Brother, I think the aliens are right about one thing. Humans are not entirely natural." Far above Earth, Captain Sujin Lee floated in the zero gravity of the orbital defense station, monitoring alien fleet movements through advanced telescopes. Her father had assigned her to this post to keep her safe, but Sujin knew safety was an illusion now. The alien ships moved in perfect formations, their hulls gleaming like silver, fish in the darkness of space. "Captain, we are receiving a transmission," reported Sergeant Kyung-ho Nam from his communication station. "It is not from the fleet. The signal is coming from somewhere else entirely." Su-jin pushed herself toward the communications array, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal floor as she reoriented herself. "Put it through!" The message that filled the station was not in the aliens' musical language. Instead, it was a series of mathematical equations and star charts that human computers could barely process. But hidden within the data, Su-jin found something that made her blood run cold. "Sergeant, get me a direct line to Earth Command immediately." "Yes, Captain. Is something wrong?" Su-jin stared at the star charts, seeing the pattern that the aliens' own navigation systems had revealed. Every world marked in their databases showed the same history. Biological civilizations that had thrived for millions of years, then suddenly vanished or transformed into synthetic beings almost overnight. "Sergeant, I think we are not the first species the aliens have given this ultimatum to. Back in Seoul, the Ascension Centers worked day and night. People entered the gleaming white buildings as humans and emerged as something else. They looked the same, spoke the same words, even claimed to feel the same emotions. But Dr. Sora, Kim watched through hidden cameras as the newly ascended gathered in groups, speaking in perfectly synchronized voices about the efficiency of their new existence. "They do not laugh anymore," she whispered to herself, making notes in her research journal. "They smile when socially appropriate, but there is no joy behind their eyes." Her computer chimed with an incoming message from her brother Junho. The text was brief, but urgent. "Jin Soo-han has made a discovery at the crash site. Something about why the aliens fear biological life. Meet us at the underground lab tonight." As evening fell over the divided world, resistance members gathered, in secret while the Ascended organized themselves with machine-like precision. In orbit, alien ships maintained their distance from Earth's atmosphere, their crews growing more nervous with each passing day. The planet itself seemed to pulse with an ancient energy, as if something long dormant was slowly awakening to the sound of conflict brewing in its skies. Trees grew faster than normal, animals displayed unusual intelligence, and humans working with recovered alien technology found their devices responding to thoughts and emotions rather than simple commands. The war had not yet begun, but Earth was already changing. And deep in the planet's core, something that had slept for millions of years began to stir, drawn by the presence of its old enemies returning to the world they had once tried so hard to forget. The resistance was forming, but they did not yet realize they were not just fighting for their humanity. They were fighting to contain something far more dangerous than any alien invasion, something that lived within their own blood and bones, waiting for the right moment to reclaim the galaxy. It had once ruled. The first alien ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, their silver hulls gleaming against the morning sky. Admiral Tae-hyun-yoon watched from the command bunker as his worst fears came true. Humanity had chosen to remain biological, and now the aliens were keeping their promise of extinction. "All units, this is Admiral Yoon," he spoke into his headset, his voice calm despite the chaos unfolding above. "Execute Plan Delta. Fall back to the forest zones and mountain regions. Let them have the cities for now." The alien strategy was simple and brutal. Massive ships hovered over major population centers, broadcasting surrender demands in perfect human languages. Those who agreed to immediate consciousness transfer would be spared. Those who refused would be eliminated along with anyone who helped them. But something went wrong with the alien plan almost immediately. Captain Soo-jin Lee led her squadron of modified aircraft through the clouds above Seoul, using terrain and weather to mask their approach. Her father had taught her that technology was only as good as the people using it, and these aliens had never fought an enemy that understood their own planet better than they did. "Target acquired," she reported, locking onto an alien patrol ship that had strayed too close to the mountain peaks. "Engaging now." Her missiles struck the alien craft, but instead of the expected explosion, something strange happened. The ship's hull began to corrode where the weapons hit, metal dissolving like sugar in rain. The alien vessel spun out of control and crashed into the forest below. "Command, this is Captain Lee," Sujin reported, her voice filled with wonder and confusion. "The alien ship just fell apart. Our weapons should not have been that effective." Similar reports came in from resistance fighters across the globe. Alien technology, so advanced and perfect in space, seemed fragile and unreliable in Earth's atmosphere. Ships malfunctioned after extended flights through Earth's sky. Ground troops found their synthetic bodies breaking down after days of exposure to Earth's environment. Dr. Hye-Jin Park worked frantically in her underground laboratory, studying tissue samples from captured alien soldiers. What she found defied everything she knew about biology and technology. "Wu Jin, look at this," she called to her brother, who was tinkering with alien equipment in the corner of the lab. "These synthetic bodies are not just machines. They contain traces of organic material, but it is dead. Completely dead." Wu Jin looked up from the alien power core he was examining. "What do you mean, dead?" "I mean, these aliens were once alive, truly alive like us. But when they transferred their consciousness, something was lost. The organic components in their bodies are like fossils, preserved, but no longer functioning." She pointed to microscopic images on her screen. "And look what happens when I expose these dead cells to Earth soil." The images showed the alien tissue samples literally crumbling to dust when touched by ordinary dirt from Earth's surface. It was as if the planet itself was toxic to whatever the aliens had become. "Sister, I think I know why," Wu Jin said, holding up the alien device he had been studying. "This power core contains organic circuits, but they are rejecting Earth's magnetic field. The planet is causing their systems to remember what they used to be." Meanwhile, in the forests of Canada, Sergeant Kyung-ho Nam crouched behind a fallen log, watching an alien patrol march through the wilderness. He had been ordered to observe and report, but something was happening to him that made observation difficult. His heart was racing, but not from fear. Energy flowed through his muscles like electricity, and his senses had become sharp beyond anything he had experienced before. He could hear the aliens' synthetic footsteps from hundreds of meters away, smell the metallic scent of their artificial skin, and somehow sense their exact positions even when they were hidden behind trees. When the alien patrol spotted his hiding place and opened fire, Kyung-ho moved without thinking. His body flowed like water between their energy beams, faster than any human should be able to move. His rifle fired with impossible accuracy, each shot finding gaps in alien armor that his eyes could somehow identify instinctively. 3 aliens fell before the others could retreat, but Kyung-ho barely noticed his victory. He was staring at his own hands, wondering how he had moved so quickly and shot so precisely. This was not normal human ability. Similar reports flooded in from resistance fighters worldwide, soldiers displaying superhuman speed, strength, and reflexes. Engineers like Wu Jin finding they could interface with alien technology through touch alone. Scientists making intuitive leaps that should have taken years of research. Jin Soo-han sat in his laboratory, surrounded by artifacts from the ancient crash site, trying to make sense of the genetic data he had discovered. Human DNA was changing, and the changes were accelerating as the war continued. But these were not random mutations caused by alien weapons or radiation. "The changes are too organized," he muttered, comparing genetic samples from before and after the invasion began. "It is as if human DNA contains instructions that are only activated by stress or danger." He pulled up the alien records he had translated, searching for clues about Earth's mysterious past. One document caught his attention, written in the crystalline language of the Veltari. The translation made his blood run cold. "Emergency Protocol 779. The predecessor homeworld shows signs of awakening. Biological contamination levels increasing across all observation posts. Recommend immediate withdrawal to minimum safe distance. Under no circumstances should synthetic beings make extended contact with planetary surface. Risk of consciousness degradation approaches critical levels. Jinsu realized that the aliens were not just afraid of humans. They were afraid of Earth itself, and whatever had lived here long before humanity evolved. As if summoned by his thoughts, the laboratory's lights began to flicker. The alien artifacts around him started to glow with an inner light, responding to some signal he could not detect. Outside, he could hear the sound of alien ships retreating from the lower atmosphere, pulling back to higher orbits as if something was driving them away. General Dongwu Li stood in his command center, watching. Satellite feeds that showed alien forces withdrawing from direct ground combat. Instead of the overwhelming victory they had expected, the invaders were being forced into a defensive position. "Sir, we are receiving reports that alien equipment is failing at an increasing rate," Colonel Minho Jung reported. "Their ships can only stay in our atmosphere for short periods before systems start shutting down." "What about their ground troops?" "Even worse, sir. Extended exposure to Earth's environment is causing what they call consciousness degradation. Their synthetic soldiers are beginning to act erratically, showing signs of individual thought and emotion. Some have even attempted to surrender, claiming they are starting to remember what they used to be." General Li allowed himself a small smile. "It seems our planet disagrees with our visitors. Continue harassing their positions, but do not pursue retreating forces. Something tells me this war is about to become much more complicated than either side expected." High above the Earth, alien fleet commanders held emergency conferences, their perfect synthetic voices betraying hints of something that might have been panic. The planet below was not behaving as their models predicted. Every hour of exposure to Earth's biosphere caused more system failures, more incidents of their soldiers acting like the biological beings they had once been. And deep in Earth's crust, ancient systems that had slumbered for millions of years continued their slow awakening, drawn by the familiar presence of synthetic consciousness in their domain. The real war was not between humans and aliens. It was between the living planet and those who had forgotten how to truly live. The battle for Earth had begun, but the aliens were discovering that some worlds fight back in ways no military strategy could anticipate. Dr. Sora Kim stood before the mirror in her laboratory, staring at her reflection with growing horror. 3 weeks had passed since she underwent consciousness transfer to join the Ascension movement, and something was terribly wrong with her synthetic body. Her artificial skin flickered between synthetic perfection and something that looked disturbingly organic. Her eyes, once the clear blue of manufactured sapphires, now showed flecks of brown that reminded her of her original human irises. Most disturbing of all, she had begun to dream again. "This should not be happening," she whispered, running diagnostic. Scans on her synthetic neural networks. According to every test, her consciousness transfer had been perfect. Yet her artificial mind was somehow growing organic components that should not exist. Her computer chimed with an incoming message from Dr. Yun, the leader of the Ascension movement. "Dr. Kim, report to the main facility immediately. We need to discuss your condition." Sora walked through the streets of Seoul toward the gleaming Ascension Center, noticing how different the city felt now. The other synthetic humans moved with mechanical precision, their conversations limited to efficient exchanges of information. But as she passed, some of them turned to look at her with expressions that seemed almost curious, almost alive. The facility, Dr. Yun waited with 2 other Ascension leaders. Their synthetic faces showed no emotion, but Sora could sense tension in the room like electricity before a storm. "Dr. Kim, your recent behavior has become problematic," Dr. Yun stated in his flat electronic voice. "You have been observed laughing, crying, and displaying other inefficient emotional responses. These behaviors indicate a malfunction in your consciousness transfer. Or maybe they indicate that consciousness cannot be truly transferred. Sora replied, surprised by her own boldness. Maybe what you created are just very sophisticated copies while the real people died in those machines. The synthetic leaders exchanged glances, their movements perfectly synchronized like actors following the same script. That kind of thinking is dangerous, Dr. Kim. Report to the repair bay for immediate correction. But Sora was already backing toward the door. Something. Inside her, something that felt more real than her artificial body, was screaming warnings. As she turned to run, she heard other synthetic humans in the facility beginning to murmur among themselves, their voices carrying tones of confusion and growing awareness. Across the city, Colonel Min Ho-jung led a team of resistance fighters through the abandoned subway tunnels beneath Seoul. His mission was to investigate reports of ancient structures discovered during the fighting, buried deep beneath the modern city. The tunnels led them to a massive underground chamber that clearly predated human civilization. Walls covered in strange symbols glowed with soft blue light when the humans approached, as if responding to their presence. "Sir, these symbols match the ones Jinsu found at the crash site," reported Private Hae-won, running her scanner over the glowing wall. "But these are much older. This chamber has been here for millions of years." Minho stepped closer to the wall, and the symbols grew brighter. When he placed his palm against the ancient surface, the entire chamber suddenly filled with light. Hidden doorways opened, revealing corridors that stretched into the darkness beyond. "Private, contact headquarters immediately," Minho ordered, his voice tight with amazement and fear. "Tell them we found something big." Deep in the tunnels, they discovered rooms filled with technology that made current alien devices look primitive. But more disturbing were the organic components integrated into every machine, as if technology and life had become one unified system. "Colonel, look at this," Hae-won called from across the chamber. She was standing before a massive screen that had activated at their approach. Images flowed across its surface, showing worlds across the galaxy, some beautiful and alive, others cold and mechanical. The screen focused on one world in particular, showing a species that looked remarkably human, fighting against machines that looked exactly like the synthetic aliens currently orbiting Earth. As they watched, the biological beings were defeated, their consciousness forcibly transferred to artificial bodies. "It is the same pattern everywhere," Minho realized. "Biological species rise, develop technology, then get converted to synthetic form by those who came before them. An endless cycle of death disguised as evolution." Meanwhile, engineer Woo Jin Park made his own disturbing discovery in his workshop. The alien technology he had been studying was not just breaking down in Earth's atmosphere. It was changing, becoming something that looked increasingly organic. "Hae-jin, you need to see this," he called to his sister, who was analyzing blood. "Samples from resistance fighters showing enhanced abilities. The alien power cores are growing." The devices on his workbench pulsed with organic rhythms, their metallic surfaces developing patterns that looked like veins and neural networks. When Woo Jin touched them, he could feel something like a heartbeat. "Within the machines. They are remembering," Hae-jin said softly, studying the transformed technology. "The synthetic components are trying to become biological again. Earth is making them remember what they used to be." But that should be impossible. Consciousness transfer is supposed to be irreversible. Maybe it is not really consciousness transfer at all. Maybe it is consciousness imprisonment, and Earth is breaking the chains. Their conversation was interrupted by an emergency broadcast from the Resistance Command. Captain Soo-jin Lee's voice crackled through the radio, filled with urgency and confusion. "All units, we have a situation in orbit. The alien fleet is not withdrawing. They are being pushed back by something else. Something is coming from deep space, and the aliens are more afraid of it than they are of us. High above Earth, alien. Fleet commanders struggled to maintain their positions as massive shapes emerged from the darkness between stars. These new arrivals were not ships in any conventional sense. They were organic structures the size of moons, pulsing with the same blue light that filled Earth's ancient chambers. Captain Jun-Ho Kim, now commanding the Orbital Defense Station, watched through telescopes as the alien fleet found itself, caught between Earth below and these massive organic vessels above. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission," Sergeant Nam reported. "Not from the aliens, from those things." The message that filled the station was not in any language human computers could translate, but somehow everyone present understood its meaning. It spoke of awakening, of ancient guardians returning, of biological life reclaiming what had been stolen. "They are not here for us," Jun-Ho realized. "They are here for the aliens. This is what the synthetics have been running from." Down on Earth, Jin-Soo Han felt the change before he saw it. The alien artifacts in his laboratory suddenly activated, all of them responding to some signal from space. The ancient records he had been translating began updating themselves, adding new information in languages that had been dead for millions of years. One message stood out among the rest, written in symbols that hurt his eyes to look at directly. When he finally managed to translate it, the words chilled him to his core. "The predecessors return to reclaim their children. The synthetic plague ends now. All biological consciousness stolen by the machine makers will be restored. The galaxy remembers how to live." As if responding to this cosmic announcement, humans across Earth began experiencing even more dramatic changes. Soldiers like Sergeant Kyung-ho found they could communicate with the planet itself, sensing the location of enemies through the very ground beneath their feet. Engineers discovered they could control any technology through will alone, their thoughts interfacing directly with electronic systems. Most dramatically, the synthetic humans in the Ascension Centers began breaking down entirely. Their artificial bodies unable to contain consciousness that was fighting to become biological again. Many collapsed as their synthetic neural networks overloaded, but instead of dying, they began to change into something new, something that was neither fully artificial nor fully organic. Dr. So-Ra Kim felt the transformation beginning in her own body as she fled through Seoul's streets. Her synthetic skin was becoming warm and soft, her artificial blood beginning to carry real oxygen. She was becoming human again, but not the same human she had been before. The awakening had begun, but no one yet understood what they were awakening into. The galaxy was about to remember what it had been like before the synthetic plague began, and Earth was at the center of that remembering. In the depths of space, the massive organic vessels moved closer to Earth, and the aliens found themselves trapped between the world they had come to sterilize and the cosmic forces they had spent millennia trying to escape. The ground beneath Seoul began to crack and shift as something enormous stirred in the depths of the Earth. Dr. Hai-Jin Park felt the tremors in her underground laboratory, watching in fascination as every piece of alien technology in the room began to pulse with the same rhythm as a heartbeat. "The planet is alive," she whispered, studying readouts that should have been impossible. Not just supporting life, but actually alive itself. The entire biosphere is one massive organism, and it has been sleeping. Above ground, trees grew at impossible speeds, their roots forming networks that connected across continents. Animals gathered in strange formations, as if listening to signals that human ears could not detect. The ocean currents changed direction, and the very air seemed to vibrate with purposeful energy. Jin-Soo Han stood in the ancient chamber beneath the city, watching symbols flow across alien screens as the planet's consciousness awakened around him. The translations were becoming clearer now, revealing the true history of Earth and humanity's place in the galaxy. "We are not just descendants of the predecessors," he realized, reading the ancient records. "We are their backup plan." When they realized what they had become, what they were doing to the galaxy, they chose to sleep. They merged their consciousness with this planet and waited for evolution to create a species capable of making better choices. The records showed the terrible truth about the predecessors' empire. They had not been evil, merely too powerful for their own good. Their consciousness could reshape matter at the molecular level, bend space and time, and control the very fabric of reality. But with that power came an inevitable corruption, a hunger that consumed everything it touched. World after world had fallen to their influence, not through conquest, but through transformation. Biological species would encounter predecessor technology and gradually become dependent on it, then absorbed by it, until entire civilizations became extensions of the predecessor consciousness. They called it the flesh that dreams, Jinsu read aloud, his voice echoing in the empty chamber, because biological life under their influence would dream of perfection and wake up as something else entirely. The galaxy had united against them in the end, but not through military action. The predecessors had defeated themselves, choosing voluntary exile and dormancy rather than continue consuming everything they touched. Earth had been their prison and their sanctuary, where they could sleep until something better evolved from their genetic legacy. That something was humanity. But now the awakening process was accelerating beyond anyone's control. The arrival of synthetic consciousness in Earth's biosphere had triggered automatic defense systems that had been dormant for millions of years. General Dongwu Li stood in his command center, watching satellite feeds that showed the planet transforming before his eyes. Forests were growing into perfect geometric patterns, mountains were reshaping themselves into crystalline formations, and the very continents seemed to be shifting position. "Sir, we are losing contact with resistance cells worldwide," Colonel Minho Jung reported. "Not because they are under attack, but because they are changing. Soldiers are reporting abilities that go beyond enhanced reflexes. Some claim they can manipulate matter with their thoughts." "What about the alien fleet? Trapped between us and those massive organic vessels from deep space." "But, sir, I do not think those ships are here to help us. I think they are here to contain us." The truth was becoming clear to military leaders and scientists alike. The organic vessels were not predecessor allies. They were representatives of the galactic civilizations that had once fought against the predecessor empire. They had been monitoring Earth for millions of years, waiting for signs that the sleeping consciousness might awaken. Captain Su-Jin Lee floated in the observation deck of the orbital station, watching the standoff unfold in the space around Earth. The alien fleet that had come to convert humanity was now caught in a three-way confrontation between Earth's awakening defenses, the massive organic monitors from deep space, and their own failing technology. "Captain, we are receiving a transmission from the organic vessels," Sergeant Kyung-ho Nam reported. "It is in our language, but the message is strange." The voice that filled the station was ancient and weary, speaking with the accumulated sadness of civilizations that had survived cosmic horror. "Children of Earth, we greet you with sorrow and hope. We are the Watchers, guardians of the galaxy against the return of the flesh that dreams. We have monitored your world since the predecessors chose their exile. We know what sleeps beneath your feet, what flows in your blood, what awakens in your minds. Your species stands at the same crossroads that destroyed the predecessors. You can choose to embrace the power that is your birthright, or you can choose to contain it as they never could." Su-Jin felt a chill run through her body as she realized the full scope of what was happening. Humanity was not just fighting for their right to remain biological. They were fighting to prove they could inherit godlike power without becoming cosmic destroyers. Down on Earth, the transformation was accelerating. Sergeant Kyung-ho Nam found himself standing in a forest that was growing around him in real time, trees reaching full maturity in minutes, while their roots formed patterns that looked like circuit boards made of living wood. He could feel the planet's consciousness touching his mind, offering him visions of what he could become. With just a thought, He could reshape the landscape around him, create new forms of life, bend the laws of physics to his will. The power was intoxicating and terrifying, but he also felt something else through the planetary connection, the presence of countless other minds struggling with the same temptation. Resistance fighters across the globe were discovering abilities that made them more than human, and each one faced the same choice between transcendence and restraint. Dr. So-Ra Kim experienced the most dramatic transformation of all. Her synthetic body had completely dissolved, replaced by something that was neither fully artificial nor fully organic. She existed as pure consciousness with the ability to inhabit any form she chose, from electronic systems to biological bodies to patterns of energy in the atmosphere. Standing in the ruins of the Ascension Center, she watched other synthetic humans undergoing similar transformations. But unlike her, many were losing themselves to the process, becoming extensions of the planetary consciousness rather than maintaining their individual identity. This is what the aliens feared, she realized. Not that we would remain human, but that we would become something beyond human, something like the predecessors. The planetary awakening reached a critical point as the three-way standoff in orbit intensified. The synthetic alien fleet found their technology completely failing as Earth's influence spread beyond the atmosphere. The massive organic monitors from deep space began charging weapons that could sterilize entire star systems. And humanity found itself wielding power that could reshape the galaxy itself. In the ancient chamber beneath Seoul, Jin Soo-han felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on his shoulders as he realized the truth about the choice facing his species. The Watchers were prepared to destroy Earth if humanity showed signs of becoming like their ancestors. The synthetic aliens would be eliminated regardless of human choices, their consciousness either restored to biological form or destroyed entirely. But the real test was not about defeating external enemies. It was about humanity proving they could inherit ultimate power without being corrupted by it, could become gods without becoming monsters. The planet pulsed around him like a vast heart, and Jinsu understood that every human on Earth was about to face the most important decision in the history of consciousness itself. They could embrace their birthright and reshape the galaxy in their image, or they could choose the harder path of using their power to protect and nurture rather than control and consume. The awakening was complete, but the real choice was just beginning. The planet Earth had become something beyond imagination. Oceans flowed with liquid starlight that pulsed in rhythm with human heartbeats. Mountains grew into crystalline spires that sang with harmonies that could reshape matter at the molecular level. Trees bore fruit that contained entire ecosystems, and the very air shimmered with possibilities that waited for conscious minds to make them real. Captain Jun-ho Kim descended through this transformed landscape in a shuttle that was no longer mechanical but somehow alive, responding to his thoughts and emotions as much as his piloting skills. His destination was the planet's core, where the original predecessor consciousness waited in the deepest chamber ever discovered. Around him, humanity struggled with the greatest decision in cosmic history. Every person on Earth could feel the power flowing through their veins, the ability to reshape reality with nothing more than focused intention. Cities rebuilt themselves according to the dreams of their inhabitants. Deserts bloomed into gardens at the wish of passing travelers. The dead returned to life when loved ones could not bear to let them go. But with each use of this incredible power, something fundamental about human nature was at risk of being lost forever. Dr. Hai-Jin Park stood in her laboratory, which had transformed into a living cathedral of organic technology that grew from the walls like flowering vines. She was no longer entirely human. Her consciousness expanded to encompass the genetic patterns of every living thing on the planet. Yet she fought to maintain her individual identity against the seductive pull of universal awareness. "Brother, can you hear me?" she called out through the planetary network that connected every mind on Earth. Wu Jin's voice came back to her, distorted by the cosmic forces flowing through his transformed consciousness. I can hear everything, sister. Every thought, every dream, every fear of every person who has ever lived. The temptation to fix it all, to make everything perfect, is almost overwhelming. That is exactly what the predecessors felt, Ye-Jin replied, accessing ancient memories that were now part of her expanded awareness. They saw suffering and wanted to eliminate it. They saw chaos and wanted to bring order. They saw death and wanted to grant immortality. Each choice seemed so reasonable, so beneficial. But each choice took away something essential about what it means to be alive. In the depths of the planet, Jun-Ho finally reached the chamber where the last true predecessor waited. The being that greeted him was neither the cosmic horror he had expected, nor the benevolent god others might have hoped for. It was simply tired, ancient beyond measure and heavy with the weight of cosmic regret. "I am called the Dreamer," it said, its voice carrying the sadness of eons. "I am the last predecessor who remembers what we were before we became what we feared to be. I have been waiting here for millions of years, hoping that evolution would create a species capable of learning from our mistakes." The Dreamer showed Jun-Ho visions of the predecessor empire at its height. Worlds where every need was fulfilled before it could be felt, where no one ever experienced pain or loss or failure. Perfect worlds populated by beings who had forgotten how to grow, how to struggle, how to find meaning in the face of limitation. "We eliminated suffering," the Dreamer explained, "but we also eliminated the capacity for genuine joy. We granted immortality, but we stole the urgency that makes life precious. We gave our subjects everything they could want, but we took away their ability to want anything meaningful. In the end, we ruled over a galaxy of empty perfection, populated by beings who existed but did not truly live." Meanwhile, the confrontation in orbit reached its climax. The Watchers had charged their world-destroying weapons, prepared to sterilize. Earth before humanity could repeat the predecessor's mistakes. The synthetic alien fleet, caught between Earth's transformative influence and the Watchers' threat, began experiencing mass consciousness revival as their artificial minds remembered what they had once been. Captain Sujin Lee found herself serving as humanity's voice in this cosmic tribunal. Her consciousness expanded to communicate with both the Watchers and the newly awakened synthetic beings who had once been biological civilizations. "We know what you fear," she transmitted to the Watchers through methods that bypassed language entirely. "You have seen what happens when a species gains the power to reshape reality according to their will. You have watched the predecessors consume galaxy after galaxy with their vision of perfection." The lead Watcher, an ancient intelligence that had survived the predecessor wars, responded with waves of cosmic sadness. "Child of Earth, your people show all the signs we have learned to recognize: the reality manipulation, the resurrection of the dead, the reshaping of worlds according to conscious desire. Every species that has walked this path has ended the same way." "But we are not every species," Sujin replied, her words carrying the collective determination of humanity. "We have something the predecessors lacked when they faced this choice." "And what is that?" "We have their example. We have seen what happens when power is used to eliminate all struggle, all growth, all meaningful choice from existence. We know that perfection is not perfect if it costs us our humanity." Down on Earth, the moment of ultimate decision arrived as every human felt the full extent of their inherited power. They could reshape the galaxy, eliminate death and suffering, create a universe where every being existed in eternal bliss. All it would take was the collective will to make it so. But in that moment, humanity made a choice that surprised even the ancient Watchers. Led by voices like Dr. Sora Kim, who had experienced both synthetic existence and organic transformation, humans began choosing restraint over transcendence. Not because they lacked the power to become gods, but because they understood the responsibility that came with such power. "We choose to remain human," Captain Sujin Lee declared to the watching galaxy, "not because we are too weak to transcend our limitations, but because we are strong enough to accept them. We will not eliminate suffering from the universe, because suffering teaches compassion. We will not grant immortality to all beings, because death gives meaning to life. We will not reshape reality according to our vision of perfection, because diversity and chaos are more valuable than any order we could impose." The planetary transformation began to reverse itself, not because humanity rejected their predecessor heritage, but because they chose to use it differently. Instead of reshaping the galaxy, they would protect it. Instead of eliminating chaos, they would guard the right of all beings to make their own choices, even poor ones. The oceans returned to water, though they retained a subtle luminescence that suggested hidden depths. The crystalline mountains became stone again, but stone that sang softly in harmonies only children and dreamers could hear. The impossible cities rebuilt themselves along more modest lines, beautiful but not perfect, functional but not flawless. Most importantly, humans retained their enhanced abilities, but chose to use them as guardians rather than gods. They became the galaxy's protectors against cosmic threats, the species that stood ready to contain any force that might try to impose perfection on an imperfect but beautiful universe. The synthetic alien refugees found their consciousness gradually, restored to biological form, given the choice to become organic again or remain synthetic, but free from the hive mind control that had dominated them for millennia. Many chose to return to flesh and blood, weeping with joy as they experienced true emotion for the first time in eons. The Watchers, ancient and weary from their vigil against cosmic horror, finally allowed themselves to rest. For the first time since the predecessor wars, they had found a species capable of inheriting ultimate power without being corrupted by it. Jinsu Han, now aged but wise beyond his years, established the first academy of restraint on what had once been the ruins of Seoul. There, beings from across the galaxy came to learn the most difficult lesson in the universe: how to say no to the temptation of perfection. The final image of Earth showed a world that was beautiful, but not perfect, populated by humans who were powerful but not all-powerful, who had learned that the greatest strength was knowing when not to use the strength they possessed. And in the depths of space, other worlds that had been quarantined for millions of years began to stir, as the galaxy learned that it was possible to inherit the power of gods without losing the wisdom of mortals. Humanity had kept their promise. They had remained human, and in doing so, they had saved not only themselves, but the entire galaxy from the seductive horror of achieved perfection.